Hello everyone, as always I am Cosmic, and today we're going to be taking a look at Calvino Noir, which is an indie stealth adventure game developed by a small team of developers at Arch Creatives, which is essentially a shared workspace for game developers in the United Kingdom. Now, Calvino Noir, while certainly it is a stealth adventure game, it can be more accurately categorized as a point-and-click stealth 2D side-scroller, and I'll go into why in a moment. What stands out most at first is the game's art style, its homage to film noir. The game truly does look wonderful, with a striking monochrome look enforced by a great use of lighting and shadows. The entire game oozes the noir style and once again goes to show that you don't need hyper-realistic graphics to make a game look great. One thing that impressed me was the attention to detail in the architecture. The developers have been really thorough in creating an authentic European architecture of that time, which has resulted in all of the levels looking superb. In fact, there's very little in the game that doesn't please the eye. It all makes for a very atmospheric experience. You can't beat the look of Wilt, the main character, standing under a street lamp in the dark rainy night with his fedora on and his trench coat flapping in the wind. It all reminds me very much of a Sin City film. The only issue with the game that can be frequently seen is the character animations, such as going up the stairs or walking through doors. Some animations are just not smooth. For example, when walking up several flights of stairs, characters will stop before each staircase and sometimes move weirdly to position themselves correctly before making the walk up, and it completely breaks any immersion that there is. Now, the game is set in 1930s Europe, where you start off as playing as Wilt, an English self-loathing scrambler, which is essentially a sort of private eye mixed with a spook, and the game is completely voice acted. All the characters have voice acting, and it also features a narrator. The voice acting is done to a really good standard, and the narrator really pulls in a sense of dark narrative with some tense undertones fitting the genre of the game. Calvino Noir is also available for mobile devices, and that is so clear very early on. The Steam version is essentially a mobile port. The controls are simple point and click. On the top of objects, icons will appear. At the bottom of the screen there are various icons. As you approach the objects, the icons will actually appear, and clicking on the icon will allow you to interact with that object. The game will give you up to 3 characters to play in each chapter, which is essentially a level, and each have their own unique abilities. For example, Wilt can sneak up and take down guards, Saskia can pick locks, etc, etc. You can easily and quickly switch between characters, allowing you to move them all at once pretty quickly. The issues come in pretty much what you would expect. It's a mobile device port, meaning that the controls are sometimes janky, inaccurate, and occasionally outright unresponsive. It's a game that suffers from being a mobile port, like mobile ports do, and it would have been so much better with a complete control overhaul for the Steam version. Moving the characters and initiating actions with the keyboard would have been so much more enjoyable, fluid, and more of an intuitive experience. The camera is also fixed on the currently selected character, which, while it does complement certain sequences, it also adds at the same time a level of annoyance. Due to the camera being fixed, you cannot cover large distances if you need to get one character across the map to another one. You have to do it the long way around by clicking towards the edge of the screen rather than just spanning the camera over and clicking the move button. It becomes very infuriating, especially if you're being chased by guards. As you would expect, stealth is the main focus of the game. Avoiding the well-armed guards, hiding in the shadows as flashlights pass you is all part of the experience. The mechanics of a decent stealth game are present as you would expect them to be. If you run rather than walk, enemies will hear the footsteps. Being seen by an enemy is obviously a dead giveaway. However, the game does have several problems in this area. First is that the guards will not investigate a dead guard, which kind of looks odd when they're walking over their corpse. And while enemies do have a line of sight, it isn't clear on how far or wide that actually extends, which on one hand is fine in terms for realism because you can't see how far they can see, but it becomes frustrating when a guard will randomly spot you and shoot you even if you're in a hiding place, and then at other times in the exact same situation they don't see you and they don't shoot you. It's very, very inconsistent. It also becomes a gamble even to try and use the hiding places that are directly in a guard's path. There doesn't appear to be many clearly defined stealth parameters, especially when it comes to things like line of sight and hiding. While getting caught and dying of gunshots certainly adds to the gritty noir aesthetic of the game, it also certainly adds to the level of frustration and the lack of enjoyment of certain sequences. The issues with detection are added to when taking into account how slow movement is. Trying to take out guards was such a gamble at points that it was often best to exploit character animations rather than using the game as intended. Instead of sneaking up on a guard or lying in wait, often with a high chance of being discovered, I instead would just place Wilt right next to a closed door, and as the guard was opening it, take him down there and then, as the guard was actually locked into the door opening sequence and could not perform any other action. Take all this and add that you're managing multiple characters at once. It can cause a string of annoyances that's just sometimes unbearable. The unquestionably punishing mechanics and clunky controls are just exasperated by the checkpoint system, which is infrequent at best. Moving on to the level design itself isn't bad, and it not only features, like I've mentioned, some lovely art assets and architecture, but it allows for multiple paths to your objective. The game does what it can to encourage emergent gameplay within the confines of a 2D side-scroller. While much of the game does feel very linear, it does have to be commended for its sections where you can get what you want in different ways. Most areas are fairly large with multiple levels, and it does employ a fog of war until you actually go into the room, and then you can always see what's in it. Like I've said, the game does always hit the kind of the visual tick boxes, and it indeed does hit the tick boxes with the level design. The problem ultimately comes down to the mechanics and the controls. Now, Calvino Noir's story, like I've said, really does ooze the noir genre. It's packed with troubled souls, detective nuance, and gritty themes. There's plenty of conversation sequences, and most do have the ability to select responses, allowing you a sense of freedom in the narrative. Albeit, it's an illusion, but it's one that allows you to kind of be as self-loathing and sarcastic as you see fit. The story and setting work well, and it's interesting enough to keep you going through the game. Overall, Calvino Noir does well in its setting and its atmosphere. It succeeds in its stylistic goals. However, it suffers as an actual game on PC due to its mobile device controls and mechanics. It's a bad port. Don't get me wrong. This is by no means in the worst stealth game category. But in a game that requires stealth and well-timed movements, having a clunky control system with infuriating and inconsistent mechanics is a huge problem, and it's borderline unforgivable regardless of how great your story and your aesthetic is. A simple control overhaul, tightening up those guard mechanics and letting the camera roam free would have made this game so much better, just so much better, to the point of it could have been a great little indie game, but it's just let down by its core functionality on PC. And if you're going to get the game, I certainly would recommend you pick it up on mobile devices. However, if you are determined to get it on PC and you're slightly unsure about if you'd like it or not, I would certainly recommend picking it up in a sale. It's not a terrible game by any means, however it is just a massive disappointment due to the mechanics. And that is my review of Calvino Noir. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Do like, subscribe and leave a comment, and I'll see you next time.